Peace Promoters was started by a group of graduate students at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. This informative film will explore the deep-rooted gun violence in Baltimore and explain why we developed Peace Promoters. Gun violence is a public health crisis that is easily overlooked by many today. In the United States, gun violence continues to create harm and detrimental effects. The gunshot wound death rate has increased by 20% from 2014 to 2017.
And I was in the street. If you got into a beef and you needed a gun, it might have been one guy in the neighborhood that had a gun. Now you could be standing on this corner and everybody has a gun. It's too many guns.
Too many guns. That's what I came to Baltimore to learn more about.
School of Public Health, gun violence in Baltimore affects the underserved urban communities and causes high rates of homicide and crime. This deep-rooted issue within the Baltimore community has led to the creation of many local gun violence prevention groups. Through partnerships with local schools and community members, these groups create resources and solutions to promote public safety. While gun violence is a widespread problem in the United States, Baltimore City bears a disproportionate share of this burden. Gun violence in Baltimore City is caused by a multitude of dynamic social and economic factors. The high crime rate correlates with the city's low education and children exposed to violence as they grow up more likely to commit violence as adults. Broken trust is a part of why there is still violence going on. There are people who do not think they can trust the police to protect them. They also do not believe that prosecutors will follow through and jail people who break the law with guns. Fear of being shot by someone who has a history of violence is a strong reason to carry a gun, which leads to more violence in the world. We have to break this vicious cycle.
Like you grab one thing over here and one thing over here and you're piecing them together. Can you explain that?
Yes, so I'm an emergency medicine physician. So we do a great job of treating people's physical injuries, but in my research world, I really needed to zoom out and address the structural factors that is causing the scourge of gun violence. And the structural factors, the structural determinants of gun violence are, failing public schools, lack of opportunity, mass incarceration, and a deteriorating physical environment. And so that's where we get to parks. Every time we step out of our house, the places and spaces around us are impacting us. They're getting under our skin, impacting our thoughts, our mood, our physical functioning. And if you live in a place that has a deteriorating and dilapidated environment with trash and no trees, that has a negative impact on the community as a whole.
For the last 7 years, the number of recorded homicides in Baltimore has surpassed 300. This skyrocketing number has had a major impact on the community and is a problem that affects those living and visiting the city of Baltimore. The issue has become so significant, the mayor of Baltimore has declared gun violence a public health crisis. Baltimore now ranks as the second highest city for the most murders, with the murder rate being 58.27 per 100,000. Despite police efforts, new laws, and court efforts, this issue has not improved and has had massive implications on the people of Baltimore. This affects people not just physically, but also emotionally. A professor from UCLA Fielding School of Public Health stated that gun violence kills people. It also injures many more people and maims people and provides them with disabilities for life. The extent of gun violence in Baltimore is significant, and something needs to be done to improve the quality of life in the Baltimore communities. While gun violence in Baltimore is clearly an issue, different stakeholders have varying levels of interest, power, and influence in creating change. Local politicians and police have both high levels of power and influence, as they can directly take action and also influence others. For example, the mayor often appoints the police commissioner, and the city has had 5 commissioners in the last 7 years. Both of these powerful elected leaders have a direct interest in winning and holding on to their positions, knowing voters are motivated by crime rates. On the other hand, groups including doctors and health professionals, businesses, and residents have less decision-making power but a high degree of influence. They can choose to take their money and business elsewhere and also help elect local politicians and leaders. These groups also experience the traumatizing effects of gun violence in the community firsthand. Lastly, the ATF stays out of the spotlight but also plays a major role. It's estimated that around 2/3 of guns used in crimes in Baltimore come from out of state. The ATF has also been found to ignore repeat violations by gun dealers that contribute to gun trafficking. Citizens in Baltimore are well aware of the crimes occurring around them, and many people have stood up to help take action. One such organization is Safe Streets, Baltimore's flagship program which seeks to defuse potentially violent situations. Safe Streets consists of trained individuals from Baltimore who work in tandem with local government resources and volunteers to help prevent unnecessary deaths by gun violence. There are also additional advocacy groups such as Marylanders Against Gun Violence, who seek to limit the access and easy availability of guns in the state. One of the most effective solutions seen are community violence intervention groups, or CVIs. These look to build long-lasting relationships for troubled youth. This provides them with counseling, support services, and job training, which could help to prevent them from turning to crime. While these have been effective in certain cities, the issues of COVID have hurt finding an impact across the country, and gun murder rates have continued to soar even with these effective programs. Firearm registration is an important filter in controlling the problem. This is by setting standards of individuals who are qualified to own a firearm in the United States. The police would then have records of every person who carry a gun. This is a vital step in order to track the use of firearms. Media played an effective role in spreading the word of the law. One of the ways to encourage citizens of Baltimore to abide by the firearms law is by giving bounty to those who report owners of unregistered firearms. Our innovative solution is to have local gun violence advocacy groups instead create an educational program around empowerment and partner with local schools. Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence already has an existing school partnership. However, they only cover education and are limited to elementary school students. Our proposed program would teach students from pre-kindergarten to high school how to become a peace promoter, which involves teaching them how to voice and advocate for change. We would also work with local schools and colleges to offer workshops and classes for their students, aiming to continue educating residents into adulthood. The educational program will be called Peace Promoters. The vision of Peace Promoters is that by 2027, the educational program will utilize its strength and networks to inspire the younger generation to share knowledge, generate critical conversations, and ignite change around gun violence. Through educational sessions and skill-based workshops, this program will guide, prepare, and empower the next generation to impact Baltimore's gun violence culture, ultimately creating value and a brighter future for all. Gun violence in Baltimore is a problem that negatively impacts far too many people. It traumatizes residents and those in the community. It limits the economic potential of the city, and it is a public health crisis that requires increased awareness and intervention. Politicians and police are working to set strategy, apprehend offenders, and get guns off the streets. Community groups are tirelessly striving to engage youth and provide alternate opportunities to protect them from gun violence. To bolster these effects, educational programming is needed to further persuade young and impressionable minds. It's not simply enough for youth to have witnessed the harsh consequences of gun violence, but to be fully educated to actively break the cycle by keeping themselves safe and not turning to gun violence. Peace Promoters is the programming needed to support our youth, communities, and future.
But what I learned from youth workers like Jamal West was that taking guns away doesn't actually solve the issue of gun violence here at all.
When you think of the system trying to fix it, what are you doing in these neighborhoods to build relationships, to give these guys options to see different? You got to give these guys something positive to come home to.
Baltimore City Mayor's office played a vital role in exploring all options to lower the gun violence in the city. In addition, they studied the financial aspects needed to end the violence, upon which they collaborated in reallocating the government grants to be properly used and resources to face this problem. Government funding agencies have sponsored foundations that work to enforce firearm laws, educate United States citizens, and enlighten students on the dangers of carrying and using guns. These promoters will not charge customers for its educational content and will partially rely on donations to fund operations. Expected donors include those who already donate to local and national gun violence prevention groups, such as Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence. The Peace Promoters will have a direct chain of command with various individuals having important roles in promoting our agenda and expanding its effectiveness across a wide spectrum of the at-risk population. With each of the director positions come a strong responsibility to uphold this position to the highest integrity. The logic model follows a results-oriented approach. The purpose of this programming is to improve the lives of Baltimoreans, particularly minors. With enormous buy-in from the community, local advocates, and government, peace promoters can better help youth understand the implications of gun violence. By creating a model of support, peace promoters may be able to better regulate firearms, train citizenry, and decrease gun violence all through community engagement. When it comes to implementing this program, there are potential legal and political barriers. For example, many people in the country are divided and have political debates regarding the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. While these groups will educate and train the community about guns, there are significant stigmas surrounding any group that advocates for gun safety and that they are seeking the complete removal of guns. This program would be completely nonpartisan by not taking any stance on gun laws. The program would provide proper education for all ages, but the focus will be primarily on the younger generation. By targeting younger individuals, the program will provide children with the knowledge, skills, techniques, and power at an earlier age. There are plenty of opportunities to raise money through fundraising efforts such as DonorBox or GoFundMe. However, since the organization will be classified by the IRS as Section 501c4, donations will not be classified as charitable donations for federal tax purposes, which is a major drawback in asking for donors. That means that a majority of the funding for the peace promoters will have to come from government grants, an extremely tedious and competitive process. In order to avoid any legal issues, the peace promoters will need experienced financial leadership that will manage funds correctly while remaining compliant with federal regulations. We appreciate your time and your support for our program. We look forward to working with the Baltimore community to get this program launched. You can contact us through Johns Hopkins Carey Business School to learn more and donate. We want to extend our sincerest gratitude to all those involved with this project and look forward to fighting this war on gun violence with our strongest weapon, knowledge.